That's a good question, yeah. It doesn't really matter in the end. I know I was very, it's a separate self at the beginning. Um, the term ego is a Freudian term from his psychoanalytic theory, isn't it? And in that theory, there's the ego, the superego, and the id. I don't know enough about it because I haven't studied psychodynamic theory enough to say specific, go into detail of what they are. But the bottom line is that ego is slightly inaccurate, especially from this approach. So this is helpful to say, well, from the approach that I'm pointing to here, we do like the phrase separate self, don't we? Because we've been schooled in that direction. And we know that when we really explore that sense of separation, whatever we call it, whatever word we use, never get stuck at the word and look at the principles underneath it. Whatever we call it, we can't find anyway. The process of self-inquiry, I am, yes I am, who knows I am, well I do, well who am I? I am a man, I live in this house. So if you take away the house and you take away your agenda, what remains? Well, I am someone who grew up in this time and someone who likes these things, and I do this role and I have these people in my life. We'll take all those things away because they're interchangeable. Then what remains? And then you draw it right down to, well, I believe these things, I think these things, I feel these things. Well, are any of those things permanent, or are they interchangeable, and do they cancel each other out? Once I was angry, now I'm happy. Then I was sad, now I'm ecstatic. So there's even more changes. So none of those things, externally or internally, are finally who I am. So if I'm none of the things that I describe myself as, this separate, defined person, defined by roles, places, times and spaces, then what remains? And we reduce it all right down, don't we? So the point of the articulation of the separate self, certainly in this approach, is to discover that there is no separate self, as you know. That the separate self, when we draw right back, right prior to, and we become embodied in that experience of amness, is the realization that what we take to be a person, thoughts, feelings, sensations and perception, is actually the I am simply moving itself. Consciousness is knowing consciousness as movements of energy. And all that's happening is there a movement of it. Now we naturally apply through our conditioning and our enculturation and our understanding of language and feelings and thoughts and sensations and perceptions, a world of forms on the outside that we've given names that define how we experience and categorize and file things away on the inside. So we go, all right, yeah, well this tree or this doggy makes me really happy, and this reduced paycheck makes me unhappy, and this broken relationship makes me unhappy. And so we have these unhappy to happy, we have this continuum, don't we, that we measure things along. And at all costs we must get to either balance at 0 or +1. We might move into a situation we perceive someone in the moment because we walk in and our perception is someone's confident and articulate. We suddenly experience a sense of -1. We go one down, less than, as the 12-steppers say. So then we might scan the room, this is only one example, and try and find someone who seems, and this isn't even conscious, someone less than our less than. So by default we then go back to 0 or +1, don't we? Because again, as a 12-stepper, so you can be in the gutter looking down at people. Or like the drunks I've encountered, or at least I'm not a drug addict. The drug addicts I encountered, at least I don't wet the bed like all those drunks. Because the ego self, the separate self, bolsters itself up by bringing others down, or at least perceiving that as such, even if it's not. So, but when we really explore all of that as well, this is the point, that we reduce all of that, those concepts and that articulation away, we can't find the personality. that we add to. We can't find the person that we add to I am. We can absolutely say it's empirical, it's scientific in that way. If we look for, I am, the knowledge of I am that we all know and are very clear on, it's here now, isn't it? I mean, can anyone say that they're not I am? No. Amness is the most obvious thing. And of course, another complication with it is that contracted sense of energy, that we seem to be individual peoples looking out through a world of our senses and perceiving and using time and space to have experiences that we describe as our life and that we've defined ourselves by thus far. But this is the world of relativity, isn't it? That everything that we define ourselves as that is interchangeable or interrelates. Just as you look around the room that you're in, everything's relating to everything else, isn't it? By its positioning and its relevance and its prevalence and its irrelevance and lack of importance. And so in the relative sense, yes, there is a person who's listening to me really labouring a simple answer, a simple question with a lengthening answer, because that's me, and I kind of like that. But thanks for your patience along the way. But the simple response to it from my point of view is, I would still err to sense of separate self and be very clear that that isn't really a thing. And perhaps, have a look at what an ego is. But I think for the sake of, it's like the recovered and recovering thing, isn't it? The last time someone asked me that, and I've been asked a lot, and I've been in both camps at one point or another, and they said, which one do you think is, right? And I just said both. They're both experiences to be known, aren't they? There's a period of recovering, and then if your teaching's been good, then you will know the experience of having recovered. And in this approach that we're doing here, even more than that, it's right, what is it that we've recovered from? Have we recovered from the ego? Have we recovered from identifying as an ego or as a separate individual mental construct full of concepts and morality and conditioning? Or have we recovered from that egoic separate self, and we've realized or awoken to our true nature, when none of that means anything in the absolute sense rather than the relative sense?